2, 1, go. Very welcome, everybody. Very welcome, each of you. Very welcome, the vets from the list of FAI. And very welcome, the young vets dreaming about this list. We start our seminar with 2 speakers, Dr. Paul Farrington and Dr. Gerrit Matheson, who will come tomorrow. And we will give you some information very necessary in our job to remind you what is very important in our function as official vets. I'm pleased to ask Dr. Rafał Przedpełski say some words from Polish Equestrian Federation. He is a member of the board of the Equestrian Federation.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, because I'm veterinarian as well, as a member of the board of Polish Equestrian Federation, on behalf of our president, Mr. Szczypiorski, and our general secretary, Michał Wróblewski, I have the honor of welcoming you here. I mean participants and lecturers and the people involved in organization from the FEI side and from the Polish side as well. I would like to inform you that the organization of our FEI seminar is co-financed by the European Social Fund. The money which was obtained by the Polish Equestrian Federation for the so-called program Human Resource for the Horse Industry are involved. And the main goal of this program was to give the education to the people which are involved in the so-called equestrian industry or horse industry in Poland, and especially in Mazovia region. And they were courses organized for the farriers, for the veterinarians, for the horsebox drivers, and as well for the people involved in organizing of the show jumping. This international project is realized in the partnership with FEI and the Polish Equestrian Federation. And today's seminar is also organized by this fund together with our federation and FEI. As you all know very well, our main goal as a vets involved in equestrian sport is to take care of the most important partner in our equestrian sport, so our horses. And as you all observe, the conditions around us are changing very much. The role of media is increasing very, very fast, and some rules are changing. So I think it would be, our seminar, it would be fantastic occasion to remind the older and experienced colleagues how we should take care of these horses, and to give some, let's say, advice to the younger colleagues how they could be involved. And I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul, you can start with your presentation.
Thank you.
And please be active.
Well, those disciplines are divided into both the Olympic disciplines and other disciplines, the Olympic ones being dressage, jumping, and eventing, as you probably know. So why we're here today and tomorrow, the principle obviously is to give instruction to new and update old FEI veterinarians. In other words, this is very much a course for people who wish to be veterinary delegates and who already are delegates. It's to give you information on the current issues facing the FEI, clean sport, medication and anti-doping. And as Janusz just said, is to provide a place for discussion between all of us, and the course should be interactive. And one of the first things that I will say is that if anybody is not understanding what I am saying in English, Janusz will be able to translate it into Polish, if that's any easier, because my Polish is not very good at the moment. I'm trying, but yeah, it'll stay trying, I think. But please do put your hand up if you have a burning issue, if you have a question that you would like to ask, because obviously I will be able to deal with it straight away or a little bit later as we're going along. So we're going to be providing lectures and discussion on performance issues of sports horses, and this is all part of the new process of FEI accreditation. The education program has been developed over the last 2 or 3 years. It is in the process still of being developed. At the moment I am working on questions for an online examination so that treating vets don't necessarily need to do the whole course, but we need to know that they understand the FEI regulations and the FEI way of life. As Janusz has already said, there are 3 of us speaking. You'll probably find that you've seen too much of me by the end of today, because unfortunately Gerrit couldn't be here till tomorrow. So largely I'm dealing with today and Gerrit will be dealing with tomorrow, where normally we interchange so that at least you're seeing a different face. The program, you've got books in front of you where all of these things are listed. We're going to start off by talking about the FEI generally, and then just one thing which is slightly the other way round. This tasks and duties of the veterinary delegate, we always give an hour and a half to 2 hours for, because obviously that's the main reason why we're here, and it gives us chance to go through it fairly gently, talk about things and so on. And one of the major parts of being a veterinary delegate is associated with annexes 9, 10 and 11, stable security, boot checks and thermography. And just in order of the timing, in terms of the fact of giving you people a break for coffee, I decided to actually bring the stable security PowerPoint up above the tasks and duties. Doesn't make a great deal of difference between the two, but it's just so you're aware that that's the way we're going round. After lunch, we will be doing scenarios, which is where I'm going to give you problems and you're going to answer them for me. So we'll be giving you these sheets of scenarios to take to lunch and discuss amongst yourselves. And then when we come back this afternoon, we'll be talking about them in more detail. And then after that, again, very much an interactive session on horse inspection. Tomorrow, Gerrit starts, and he'll be dealing with the MCP and prohibited substances, the MCP procedure and so on. I will then be speaking on fluid therapy, which is one of the major areas that we come into contact with as veterinary delegates. And I think it's extremely important that we should all understand what's involved with that. Equally well, ethics, welfare, international movement is a large section. And then in the afternoon, dealing with some practical processes, hopefully to get you away by about 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. It's going to have to be then, because I've got a plane to catch, so we can't delay too long. So we're dealing with, as I said, all of those processes during the time that we are here. This is a picture of Lausanne, which is where the FEI headquarters are. It's a lovely, tranquil scene, and the FEI have just moved into some fantastic new headquarters. But the reason for showing these few pictures is that over the last few years, the FEI has gone through a major process of change. And it hasn't always been easy. There have been issues to deal with, both in terms of the structure of the FEI, veterinary issues, medication issues from our point of view. And at times, it began to look at, we didn't really know where we were going. But I'm pleased to say that things have improved considerably. And at the end of the day, the reason for all this change and the reason why we are here is to be able to help to produce good sport. This is what we want to see. We want to see nice, happy faces. We want to see people coming to events who really enjoy the whole process of being there. So we're here to support, not to interfere. And equally well, in order to do that, we need to be a good, happy team. You know, you can't be a veterinary team at any particular event without knowing each other very well and having a few drinks together and such like. So we are going to have a group photograph a little later. So please, would you all smile? Because the photograph that's going back to the FEI, I would like everyone to think that they're really enjoying this. But at the end of the day, this is what's important to us, okay? We want to see a horse like this who's finished its competition, that looks well, that looks happy, and our whole reason for being here is to deal with that. Right, so we'll go on to the next, which is FEI structure and governance, isn't it? Now, right, so as I say, we're going to initially go through who the FEI are, how the FEI is structured, and starting off with the purposes and principles of the FEI. And the International Equestrian Federation is here to be the sole responsibility, the sole responsible authority for all international events in the disciplines of the dressage, jumping, eventing, as we've already described. But most importantly, that organisation should be based on the principles of equality and mutual respect between all participating national federations. Its role is to protect the image and develop equestrian sport. It's to provide rules, regulations and standards, approving all the event programs for equestrian competitions around the world, including championships, regional and Olympic games, and to control the technical organisation for all these events, including the veterinary matters. Now, you will find that I come back to this particular comment again and again, because this should actually be at the forefront of our minds. Every single time we are going to a competition as a veterinary delegate, we should all be aware of the fact that the FEI requires all those involved in international equestrian sport to adhere to the FEI's code of conduct and to acknowledge and accept that at all times the welfare of the horse must be paramount and never be subordinated to competitive or commercial influences. And that is the sentence that you need to have at the front of your mind every time you are going to a particular competition. So the FEI was founded in 1921 with just 7 members. Its current membership is now 135. The headquarters moved through various places until it finished in Lausanne in 1991. And in principle, it's composed of a General Assembly, a bureau, committees, and the headquarters staff. This is a few of the FEI landmarks, which I'm not going to read through for you. They're in your programs there. But perhaps in terms of the conversations that we will be having, first rules were published in 1931, but it wasn't until 1992 that we started the non-steroidal debate. And it wasn't until 1992 that the FEI banned phenylbutazone in all competitions. And ever since then, the non-steroidal debate has continued, and we will continue to have that here, no doubt, when Gerrit comes tomorrow. So the organisation, as I say, there's a General Assembly, which is composed of all the member nations. And below them is the Bureau, which I will talk about in a moment, chaired by the FEI President. And they are answerable to the General Assembly. So the General Assembly meets, and they are the ones who eventually will make decisions concerning their sport. And then below the Bureau, the Secretary General at Lausanne with the headquarters staff, and also coming into the Bureau is all the committee structures. So those are the areas that I just need to speak about. In terms of the administration at headquarters, there are various departments, as listed down the left-hand side, and Graham Cook, who I'm sure many of you will have already met, is the director of the veterinary department. But you now have the names of all of those written down on your sheets. And then the standing committees. We have various committees which are all divided, as you can see through here, from audit and compliance through the technical committees, discipline committees. An athletes committee has been formed so that everybody is actually feeding back up the structure all the time. And in terms of those committees, these are probably the most important names on the list that I've given you already. In terms of the various discipline administrators, I've mentioned Graham already. All these other people are charming people and they're very easy to speak to. So if you have an issue with your particular sport or a particular competition where you've seen something, there is no harm in sending an email to any of these people directly. If you feel as though you want to do that, please always copy Graham in, because Graham obviously needs to keep touch with everything that's going on as things occur. The FEI is already also divided into groups all around the world. We have 1, 2, and 3 up the top there. Well, you can see how it composes on the map. And what's probably relevant to us here today are those groups 1, 2, and 3 in terms of how those countries are divided. In terms of present day, the groups 1, 2, and 3 are largely lumped together. And actually, to be honest, that is where the majority of the equestrian sport in the world occurs. And therefore, this block of countries actually carries a great deal of influence in terms of going back into the FEI reference certain issues. Now you can see therefore that the FEI covers the world. It's a very, very large organization, so it has to have very good forms of communication. The FEI website has been developed over the last few years. I have to say it is still difficult to find your way around it at certain times, but it's a great deal better now than it was 2-3 years ago, and it continues to get better. That they produce a calendar of events, annual report, all that list, direct memos to the national federations, veterinary guidance notes. So they're using everything that's available, including the social media, to try to be able to communicate as easily as possible. Some of you may remember the FEI Bulletin, but that's been replaced by FEI Focus, together with National Federation updates, which if you're not, as veterinary delegates, receiving those updates from your national federation, please write into your national federation or to your contact vet to say, please, could you have those updates? It's just a matter of pressing a button to forward it to a circulation list. Guidance notes come from the veterinary department directly to all FEI vets, and we are trying to set up specific websites in terms of trying to be able to make things as accessible as possible. And we have here feivet.com, which actually came out as a result of a course that I ran in Hartbury a couple of years ago, where one of the vets in the audience actually came to me afterwards and said, look, why don't we have an FEI vet, treating vet? Everybody could join in on this. At the moment, that has not been developed, but we hope that it will be in the future. Finally, just to say in terms of communication to the FEI, I've deliberately put this in, so again, it's in your notes. So you've got the address of headquarters, telephone, fax, the websites, And I underlined on here the veterinary regulations, because in fact, you know, when I first started this game, I just went round with a bundle of notes, which were the FEI veterinary regulations, which I had to refer to. And they really only got changed every 4 years. FEI regulations are changing pretty well all the time, one way and another. There's been a massive amount of redevelopment. And in fact, actually, one of the next projects is to separate what is the true regulation, what is the true law, from veterinary advice. At the moment, the veterinary regulations cover both the law and acres of advice. So we want to sort of separate those out, although they'll be interlinked, to make them easier to take forward and understand. As far as veterinary matters are concerned, the Vet Committee was founded in 1966, and we had Professor Bobolev as the first chairman, and he did it from 1966 to 1990. So he was around for a good length of time and did a great deal of good work. And then since that time, the chairman of the Veterinary Committee has run in sort of 8-year terms. So our present one is John McEwen. And then equally well, the veterinary department wasn't founded until 1982. And during that time, there have only been 3 people. And some of you will know Alex Atok and Fritz Leuter, and as I say, now Graham Cook. And here we are in the veterinary department, and it is one of the things that we've been working on for a great deal of time. It's always been very, very difficult to go into the FEI to find just one veterinary director and one support staff when you're trying to deal with the welfare of the horses all around the world. And the veterinary department has been seriously understaffed for many, many years. But I'm pleased to say that the FEI is beginning to realise that, and Graham has done a great deal of good work in that respect. Dominique and Mariama have been with the FEI veterinary department for some time. Dominique particularly has been there for as long as I've been around, I think, so she's great. But Victoria and Inka have just joined the FEI veterinary staff. Victoria is a vet, and Inka has come in as part of the support staff as well. They are literally only just starting, and I'm going to make them stand up so you can see them, because they have come here on their first veterinary course. Welcome, Victoria and Inka. Here, well done. And the reason I'm pointing them out and embarrassing them mightily, I don't see why I should just share it all myself, is the fact that if you have any burning issues, to go back to Graham Cook, it would be a really good idea for you to write those notes and give them to either Victoria or Inka to take back to Graham, obviously with all your contact details. Equally well, at the end of the course, I'm always interested to get feedback in terms of the way you feel that the course has gone and such like. So if you've got good reports, come and see me. If you've got bad reports, go and see them, could you? Because then I can go home happy. Okay, you may sit down again now. Thank you. So the duties of the veterinary department, we appoint vets for events, manage the MCP program, all the doping medication issue, the policy of the FEI passports, which is some 7,500 a year, need to be dealt with, government liaison on international disease, veterinary regulations, running the veterinary committee. There's a great deal of things that the veterinary department does. And you can just see from that list the work that must be involved to try to sort of cope with that. And part of the veterinary structure is that the veterinary department is advised by the veterinary committee, which is a chairman and 6 members. And they then are advised by the list advisory group, which has been not long set up. It's been going now for 2 or 3 years. And they are advising on medications, what should be on the prohibited list, what should not be on the prohibited list, and then various subcommittees that can be appointed at any particular time. And all of those are responding back to the veterinary department headquarters in Lausanne. Paths of communication on medication issues. The veterinary committee obviously is always interrelating with the veterinary department, but not by the tribunal, who are the people who will rule on those. But you can see how we get the interaction between the veterinary department and the legal department. from the FEI reference laboratories, and from named experts. In other words, we are a group of people who always like to take expert advice wherever that's necessary, because very often, you know, you can be talking in terms of positive medication results in terms of a rider's career, and therefore anything that is dealt with very, very seriously in order for it to be seen to be a fair process. The Veterinary Committee, as it stands at the moment, this is John McEwen wearing his Stetson hat out in Lexington last year. And John is the chairman, as we've already described. Graham acts as the secretary. At the moment, Kent Allen from the States is the vice chairman. And then these members, Gerrit, who'll be with us tomorrow, Yves Rosier, Harvard Somerset, Ray Randall, and Jenny Hall. And the essence of it is that we get a rotation every 4 years. And sometimes it's a matter of thinking, well, you know, who can we encourage to come on to the Veterinary Committee? And I think it's actually quite important that if you are developing a career, being a veterinary delegate and such like, once you have some experience, it would be very helpful if we get feedback into the Veterinary Committee. So through your national federation, you can actually apply to come onto the Veterinary Committee and be part of this ruling process. Because I think it's only when we put feedback in as experienced practical vets that the Veterinary Committee can do its best work. The Veterinary Committee responsibilities: we advise headquarters on establishing veterinary policy, maintaining a cross-discipline approach so that we try to get equality across the disciplines in terms of what we do, amending the veterinary regulations and any special veterinary conditions for Olympic Games and Championships, and they also appoint, monitor, suspend and revocation of contact vets and event veterinarians. And it continues. We approve the analytical laboratories for medication control. We analyze and agree the procedures for medication control, the authorization protocols for treatment, and maintenance of the list of prohibited substances for horses, and then equally well the management of horse inspections and veterinary examinations. So a lot of this we are going to be covering in the next couple of days, because obviously they are key roles as far as we are concerned. We monitor horse disease, quarantine, isolation requirements, transport, which is vital, and all other matters concerning the health of horses. We also review relevant research proposals and their budgets, because in some extent, you know, if we are going to maintain the welfare of the horse, we've got to put something back. And part of the veterinary budget, part of the money that comes through the FEI can be fed through to suitable research projects all around the world. And people do make application to the FEI for financial support to carry out certain levels of research, which we feel then is going to be important to the future welfare of the horse. We have relations with various organizations and the education of relevant personnel on the matter of standards at events related to horse welfare, including stable security, which is why we're here. So if we go back up to the top of that tree and look at the FEI Bureau, as I say, it's chaired by the president of the FEI, who is Princess Haya, the first and second vice presidents, the chair of the technical committees, the chair of the regional groups, audit and compliance, and the athletes committee. Now, that doesn't look very large. It's a fairly short list. But actually, if you put all of those people around one table to the president, you can suddenly see that there are an awful lot of people involved. And the problem is that when you get that sort of size, when you get that number of people, it becomes too large to be effective. And then the Bureau members tend to decide or react on matters which have a direct effect on their own stakeholder group, rather than looking and contributing on issues from a general standpoint. So due to the size and lack of harmonization within the Bureau, decisions and responsibility all too often are then borne by the President and the Secretary General. So an executive body has been board has been formed, and an athletes representative added in 2011, and associated with this, a constitutional task force was formed in 2011. So when I was saying at the beginning that the FEI has been going through a great deal of change, this is the sort of change that we're talking about, and it will continue to go along those lines. In other words, we hope that the FEI, as it grows, becomes a more efficient organisation and is therefore more effective. So we are going to go on to the vets now. Officials are and their roles in equestrian sport. And we start off with FEI event veterinarians. And this is the list of official event vets maintained by the FEI Veterinary Committee, but it's nominated by the National Federation. So anybody who wants to be an FEI event vet, in the first instance, has to be nominated by their own National Federation. And then from this list can be chosen, vets as a veterinary delegate, associate delegate, presidents of the Veterinary Commission in larger events, and foreign veterinary delegates. The event vets tend to either act as a veterinary commission or at smaller events just as a veterinary delegate. And in this principle, you have veterinary commissions for CIOs, cup finals, championships and games, and a vet delegate usually is a foreign veterinary delegate for all other competitions. The veterinary delegate at all those other competitions can be supported by an associate veterinary delegate, whereas with a veterinary commission, the veterinary commission is composed of the foreign veterinary delegate, the president and the associate member, and you will see that I put the foreign veterinary delegate at the top of that list. And the reason for that is that the president of the veterinary commission is National Federation appointed, whereas the foreign veterinary delegate is FEI appointed, and actually it's the foreign veterinary delegate who is the truly independent person at that particular event. So they are the one who makes the report back to the FEI at the end of the event. When we get to the Olympic Games, you tend to have one commission for the 3 disciplines, a president, foreign veterinary delegate, and then there can be a number of associates depending particularly on what the problems are. So for example, here in Hong Kong, we had this chap, Keith Watkins, really nice guy, who was working for the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and he was appointed as an associate veterinary delegate for the Olympic Games specifically to deal with the quarantine issues going in and out of Hong Kong, because we did have a great deal of health and quarantine issues in terms of bringing horses in from all around the world, maintaining the health and security of all the horses in the Hong Kong Jockey Club, because the whole of the economy of Hong Kong almost revolves around that jockey club. There's a great deal of money that goes through it because obviously they're very keen on their gambling, so the horse racing could not be prejudiced in any way. Meantime, at the Veterinary Commission at the World Equestrian Games, from an equestrian point of view, is a much bigger event because we are now covering all the disciplines of the FEI. So for a World Equestrian Games, we tend to have 3 commissions for the 8 disciplines, one for eventing, driving and reining, one for dressage, jumping and vaulting, and then one for the endurance and para associated at the bottom there. So moving on, the next vet that we need to speak about, and I know some of you here will be testing vets for medication control. The MCP program at the moment only covers groups 1 and 2, which I was describing earlier. But hopefully the MCP program is going to be expanded all around the world once we get the reference laboratories in place and once we get equalities of standards and testing all around the world. The MCP vets used to meet once a year to debrief with the veterinary committee, but it was felt that that was sort of rather going over the top. So they have a meeting once in a while is probably the best way to describe that, when it's actually best decided by the veterinary department. Moving on from that, we have team vets who are appointed by their national federation. This is a good friend of mine, Graham Potts. You can always tell an Australian because he never has his tie done up. All right, the team vets are a very, very important role, and it's very important as veterinary delegates that we have very good interaction between them. Equally well, an individual competitor's private vet, otherwise known as ICPV, they have to be accredited by the organising committee, so they have to be introduced by the individual competitor. We then have the treating vets themselves, for example, vets out on a cross-country course, who are provided by the organising committee. We have the examining vet in the holding box, who is usually the associate veterinary delegate, but sometimes, in terms of the numbers available, can just be the treating vet for the stables. And then, as I've said already, we can have quarantine vets. And then for the very large events, we have a veterinary coordinator or a veterinary services manager and a veterinary controller for the cross-country course at both the Olympic Games and the World Equestrian Games. So you can see that list is very, very large. And it's very, very important that we're all working together. You can't have people on one side of the fence, people on the other side of the fence. We are trying to produce happy sport, welfare of the horse. And it's only by working constructively together that we can produce good, fair and clean sport. So conflict of interest comes into that. A team or private vet may not act as a veterinary delegate, member of a veterinary commission, or compete at that same event. A veterinary delegate or member of the veterinary commission, on the other hand, may not act as a team vet, treating vet, or compete at the event either. So it's very important that the role is defined and that role is maintained. Problems that can occur, which you have to avoid: being asked to act as a treating vet in other classes where you are a veterinary delegate, having to make decisions on your own clients' horses during events, or having prior knowledge of a particular horse. I'm sure we've all been in that situation. It's very, very difficult to avoid it, because the reality of it is that if we want good veterinary delegates, we want those veterinary delegates to be in practice. You know, we want veterinary delegates who are actually out there on the road every day treating horses, because then it's much easier to give the right decisions as a veterinary delegate. So if you're working in your own country, it's almost inevitable you're going to actually have your own clients' horses there. So it is something that you have to try to handle in the best way that you can. You could be acting as an advisor or consultant for a team or a national federation during an event. I mean, it's something that I have a great admiration for John McEwen as chairman of the veterinary committee, because he seems to be able to carry on various roles. He's directly responsible as an advisor to the British Equestrian Federation, and yet he's also chairman of the veterinary committee. He's also team vet for the British dressage team. So he is aware of all these conflicts of interest. And as I say, I have a great admiration for him, because I've seen him working at events, I've seen him working in committee, and he does very easily separate those so that he doesn't have conflicts of interest. So the role of the event veterinarian is to advise organising committee, FEI, ground jury, the appeal committee, stewards, person responsible, team vet, chef de keep, trainer. It's a list. But you are there as a focus for all veterinary matters. And it's very important, therefore, to get to know them all. Because if you don't know who they are, how can you talk to them, or vice versa? As I say, horse welfare coming up again, and quarantine and disease control. We act as a surveillance to make sure that the veterinary regulations are being maintained, and as a process of enforcement through veterinary examinations, inspections, passport, emergent response and treatment, all of which I'll be coming on to during the day today. The FEI officials and team vets are nominated, as I've said, and recommended by the National Federation, or anybody want to tell me what the NHV is? See, I'm going to go interactive now. It's a new acronym, or whatever, for the contact veterinarian, but they've now decided to call that person the National Head Veterinarian. So that is what NHV stands for. Janusz, who is the NHV for Poland? Do you know? You are? Okay. So there, on the laser, standing over on the left, any Poles here? This is your contact vet. This is your National Head Veterinarian. So if you have any particular problems, you can always go to the FEI through Janusz. It's important that they be fluent in English, spoken and written. So I'll say again, anybody here today who is not understanding what I'm saying, please put your hand up so we can actually sort problems out. And you need to be experienced, you need to be experienced in one or more FEI disciplines, which involves being attending at 5 events in 3 years and getting 3 recommendations from 3 different mentors at 3 different events. That has been dwelt on quite a lot by the veterinary committee in terms of trying to decide how much experience you actually need before you can go out onto the road on your own. But once you've done that, once you've been on one of these FEI courses, you then get a veterinarian card, which hasn't been produced yet, but will be produced. Actually, you can take that back to the FEI. I'm wondering where the FEI cards have got to. But that lasts for 5 years. And then that can be be maintained by attending refresher courses. We also have the treating vets and the individual competitors vets. These are appointed by the organising committees at an event for emergency treatment or nominated by a national federation. But most importantly, for the ICPVs, they have to be approved by the FEI. They have to be able to maintain that list. And the way to be approved by the FEI, as I say, we're just in the process of developing the online examination now, and hopefully the online examination will be available to vets who just want to stay as individual competitors vets and not be a veterinary delegate. Hopefully that'll be available by next year. But if they've done the online examination, they cannot act as the veterinary delegate because they have to have been on the course first. So if they're coming along as treating vets, they must liaise with the veterinary delegate at all times. They must report all treatments and requests for etuis. Anybody know what an etui is? No? Willie? It's a therapeutic use exemption form, exactly. In other words, it is a form that a treating vet will fill in to try to get authorization for treatment at event and try to keep the horse within the competition, which again I will talk about a little bit later. And as I say, they also will get what we call an authorized veterinarian card, which lasts for 5 years. That will be a different card to the one that the full veterinary card that anybody who's attended the veterinary delegate course, so that here as veterinary delegates, you can go on to be a veterinary delegate at one competition, you can go to another competition and be a treating vet. A treating vet who's only done the online examination can go to a competition and be a treating vet with the authorization of the organising committee, but they cannot then go on to another competition to be a veterinary delegate because they're not qualified to do so. The only exception to this regulation as we are developing at the moment is that inevitably for the big competitions, for the big cross countries particularly, it's important to have very good veterinary cover out on the cross-country course. And under those circumstances, what we're looking for is experienced vets who can pick a body off the ground as quickly as possible and maintain the welfare of the horse. And where those vets have no interest in becoming treating vets, have no interest in becoming veterinary delegates, we will allow those to be appointed for competitions because we want to encourage people to come forward. We don't want to set barriers for them. But if they are just coming in as emergency course vets, that's fine, but they would not get stable access. The contact veterinarian or the national head veterinarian that I've just mentioned, there is one for each national federation and appointed by that federation in consultation with the National Veterinary Authority. And the objective of the national head veterinarian is to assist the communication between the FEI and event vets. The contact vet must be experienced as an equine vet, familiar with the equestrian sports, and manage to keep up with all matters relating to health and import and export. And then the FEI must provide the contact vets with all the FEI documentation, keep them fully informed so that the contact vet with the National Federation can keep everybody else informed. The whole idea of the electronic communication is to keep everybody in the loop. And I'm saying to you here today is that if you feel you're not in the loop, find out who your own national head veterinarian is and contact them. Or go directly to your national federation and say, I want to be kept updated by the FEI, because the FEI updates do come out on a regular basis. In addition to that, there is an association called the International Treating Vets, who felt that they needed to have an association of their own to share ideas, to share issues, to take things forward to the FEI. And their issue, their principle is also to promote the welfare of the competition horse, act as a line of communication to the FEI and between treating vets, and then disseminate information of relevance to those treating vets, and act as a line of communication, well, yeah, I've said to the FEI Veterinary Committee. But the principle of it is that they have formed a body, as we have a body, but as I said all along, it's very important that we all interact together. Because, as I say, there will be people probably here in this room who are wanting to be veterinary delegates, who are veterinary delegates, but are also treating vets, and in some cases can be team vets, and therefore you can be members of both organisations. None of these things is sacrosanct. So the potential discussion issues that we may have over the next couple of days in regard to that structure is how many event vets should be listed by a national federation? In other words, what is a reasonable number for the amount of competition that you have in your particular country? If you go onto the FEI website and look at it, there are lists and lists of people who probably have never actually been active. So these lists are being reviewed as part of the education process. It's not stopping people coming on, but it's trying to make sure that the people who are coming on are active and taking an active role. Because if you're not taking an active role, then it's very difficult to keep up to date, and it's therefore very difficult to give fair and wise decisions when you're at an event. How long should an event vet stay on the list? Age limit and retraining. So the age limit at the moment is 75. The closer I come to that, the further I'm sort of pushing it up, I have to say. Although I'd like to think I've got a few years before I get to that level. And then I've already mentioned the retraining of 5 years. And should there be proper payment for FEI vets, which again we'll discuss a little bit later on. So other qualifications that you need to be a good FEI vet. You've got to have the ability to look relaxed and confident, even when under pressure, all right? Even if you've got a turmoil going on inside, just look relaxed, look professional, okay? We all have it in practice. When you hit that artery that you weren't supposed to hit and the blood's flying, oh, you know, that's supposed to happen, that's fine, okay? And you sort the problem out. So always look relaxed. I have to say sometimes you can look too relaxed. This is a good friend of mine, Colin Roberts, and we were in Aachen doing thermography together, hypersensitivity testing. So he, poor chap, fell asleep while I was working as usual. And so I managed to get this lovely picture of him at the same time. The conclusions to all of that, the responsibilities of veterinary delegates and veterinary commissions are considerable. In addition to the experience and current knowledge of the sport, veterinary regulations, etc., the veterinary delegate has a role as the ambassador for the profession and the sport. In other words, you are representing the veterinary profession all around the world, wherever you may travel. And it's very important that we as a veterinary profession are respected and admired. The profile of the veterinary delegate has been raised considerably in recent years, particularly in association with the Olympic Games. So the veterinary delegate is being called in to assist in preventing a potential crisis rather than coping once one has occurred. And that's probably the philosophy that we have in practice. If you think about it, we are trying to prevent horses having injuries. We're trying to prevent them having disease because we would much rather do that than have to pick up the pieces afterwards. You've nearly gone to sleep, but we're going to move on to better things. So that's the structure of the FEI sorted out for you.